Even how will that speech from the US president be received where you are?
It was interesting. I felt like that we were looking at something of a stump speech from Donald Trump during most of at least the first half of that, as he was talking about his economic record and going into detail of how he perceived the gains that had been made into the US economy under his tutelage. Also plenty of criticism for his predecessors in some of the economic data that he was giving. Be interesting to see how much of that holds up to firmer scrutiny. Some of those numbers certainly sounded a bit suspicious, but of course the president has access to data that the rest of us don't, so we can only assume that he has based that on figures that perhaps aren't in public knowledge yet. Certainly the foreign direct investment ones are not currently released, the announcement that he made about gains in foreign direct investment into the US. So it'll be interesting to see as that detail shakes out, to see how much of those figures match up. But certainly very much him hailing his economic policies, the progress made of the US economy. The US economy is undeniably booming under Donald Trump, and there have been huge gains in the stock market. He made reference to the tax cut program as well. Interesting perhaps to point out, though, that of course gains in the stock market don't mean gains for most ordinary people, as those who are invested in the stock market are certainly in the richer end of society, and certainly the tax cuts program as well that was announced tended to benefit higher earners rather than lower ones overall. But the tone of the speech very much in praise of his own economic policies. He mentioned, as expected, the trade deals with China and also with the US, Mexico and Canada, replacing NAFTA, saying that those deals are, of course, much better, he felt, than their predecessors. Interesting to hear one commitment on the climate issue, that the US will participate in this 1 trillion trees programme. That's something that the World Economic Forum is pushing for public and private investment to plant those 1 trillion trees by the end of the decade. That's one of the flagship projects that the World Economic Forum is pushing this year, but not much other news on the climate front in Donald Trump's speech. Did seem to be largely directed at a domestic audience, less or fewer promises in terms of America's openness to investment that we would have heard 2 years ago, for example. So a bit of a contrast there comparing to his last economic speech, but plenty in there for people to digest and pick over in the coming hours.